The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
The 11-year-old Mia Cirio was in that fourth grade classroom that we've heard so much about with Miss Garcia and Miss Mireles. She said they were watching Lilo and Stitch because it was the end of the school year, they'd finished their lessons, and she said one of her teachers got an email that there was a shooter in the building and went to the door, and he was right there. And they made eye contact.
The shooter made eye contact with the teacher.
And then he shot out the window in the door. And then Mia says it just happened also fast. He backed the teacher into the classroom. And he made eye contact with the teacher again, looked her right in the eye, and said, "Good night," and then shot her and killed her.
He said good night before he shot her.
Good night. And then it happened pretty fast after that as well. He started open firing in the classroom. He hit the other teacher, a lot of Mia's friends. At that point, Mia was hit by fragments of the bullets. You could even see them yesterday. I mean, on her back, on her shoulders, the back of her head.
The shooter then, she says, went into the adjoining classroom.
Yeah, so he went through this door to the adjoining classroom, and at that point, Mia could hear screams. She heard a lot more gunfire. And then she said she heard music. She thinks it was the gunman that put it on. He started blasting sad music. And I asked her, like, what was that? Like, what kind of music? What do you mean by that? And she just said it sounded like "I want people to die" music.
She said she heard music. She said it sounded like "I want people to die" music. What did Mia do then?
So she had a friend next to her that she was pretty sure was already dead and was laying on the ground bleeding out. And she put her hands in her friend's blood and then smeared it, she said, all over her body. She wanted to look like she was dead. She was scared that the gunman was going to come back through that adjoining door back into the classroom, and she wanted to be able to play dead.
Holy crap. So now that the producers, that was a CNN producer, Nora News, talking to the kids who survived, talking to the kids who made it out of that classroom, are now telling the story of what they saw and what they heard and what they went through and how they played dead and how they laid one on top of the other, trying to, be bypassed. Now we understand that every single thing that we were told in these dog and pony show press conferences were all made up. Everything that they told us was a lie. Everything. From the fact that the police officers ran in, the brave, school resource officer. I mean, we had a lieutenant yesterday tell us that he had talked to the school resource officer, talked to him, and now we know that the school resource officer wasn't even there. We've known that for a couple days now, but here today there was yet another press conference. They have gone full circle from the original director of the Department of Public Safety, Mr. McCraw, who was praising the brave resource officer and the brave police officers who ran toward the bullets and everything. Then they downshifted into some regional director. Then they downshifted again into a lieutenant. Now we're back to the director. And the director held a press conference yet again today and finally admitted to an enormous amount of buffoonery, just admitted that they were lying and admitted that they knew they were. This is not like, oh, as we go along, we'll get more information. We'll be able to flesh it out even in more detail. No, this was an admission today that they had decided to lie and that the time to make the excuses about the botched response had ended. That the entire press corps, this is why a free press is so important to a free society. But if the entire press corps, if local news and CNN and MSNBC and Fox News even, and all of the news channels and all of the networks, the ABCs, the CBSs, if they hadn't descended on this little town of Uvalde and demanded answers, then the Texas governor, the Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, the director of the Department of Public Safety, all of the Texas Rangers, everyone that responded from Border Patrol, they all would have gotten away with lying about what happened that day. They would have all gotten away with it. And you want to know something creepy? What's really creepy is the true story of this is so similar to the story of Parkland. It's so similar to what happened in Florida, here in Florida, Parkland, at Marjory Stoneman Douglas. I don't know if you remember this. I'm going to jog your memory ever so slightly here, okay? In Parkland, Florida, there was a sergeant named Brian Miller. Yeah, I actually went back and looked at it. There was a police sergeant named Brian Miller. He was on the payroll, obviously, and he responded to Marjory Stoneman Douglas, knowing that there was an active shooter in that building. This is a man who was on the payroll for $137,000 a year. Okay, that's what his salary was. He was one of 4 Broward County sheriff's deputies that responded and was terminated after the investigation into what actually happened at Marjory Stoneman Douglas produced a 439-page report. He was fired for neglect of duty, failing to act during the 2018 shooting that left 17 high school kids and, the coach, the geography teacher dead, right? Mr. Feiss, and a geography teacher also died. Trying to open locked doors, by the way, to let kids out. Locked doors. So either the door needs to be locked or the door was left open, and open doors are bad, but locked doors are also bad. I don't know. But, Ted Cruz, it's the door. It's the door's fault is what it is. Anyway, Sergeant Brian Miller, after he was fired, he actually sued saying he didn't receive, check this out, due process. And he wanted his job back. And an arbitrator found that Sergeant Miller's due process rights were violated. He didn't get due process rights. And so they hired him back. He's back on the Broward County Sheriff's Department's police force. The guy hid in his car. Okay. And then there was the school resource officer. His name was Scott Peterson. I don't know if you remember him or not, but he remained outside. Video cameras actually captured him standing underneath trees the entire time that, Nicholas Cruz, who was the shooter in that particular school shooting, so many of them, was rampaging through the school. And Nicholas Cruz was going from floor to floor, door to door, shooting through the windows of the locked school doors. Seriously. And then you had teachers who were trying to let kids, because the doors automatically lock behind you due to protocol now. And so you had teachers that were trying to open the doors to let kids back into classrooms. And those were the teachers that were shot and killed. Some teachers were shot multiple times. Like Mr. Feiss, I think, was wounded at first. And then the shooter went back and revisited Mr. Feiss, who was opening up doors to try and let kids back into classrooms. He shot him twice. Once wounded him, and then the second time shot him fatally. This is so similar to what happened there that the only conclusion one can draw is that the police force, the officers here, everybody involved in Texas Department of Public Safety, they know that this is exactly what happens in school shootings. That police, even though they're this idea that they only have a handgun, well, that's a stinking lie. And you know how you know that's a lie? Because the parents who the police were arresting, the parents outside the school who were trying to get in to rescue their kids, were tased, they were handcuffed, and other people were videoing it on their cell phones. And you could see the cops had long guns. You can see.
all things Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, The Randi Rhodes Show.
We've heard that some law enforcement officers actually went into school to get their kids out. Can you talk about that?
Right. So what we do know, Vanessa, right now that there was some police officers, families trying to get their children out of the school because it was an active shooter situation right now. It's a terrible situation right now. And of course, just as we mentioned, the loss of life, it's just terrible. It's a terrible tragedy right now that took place. But again, we got to keep acknowledging those brave men and women that actually were there on scene that met this suspect. And of course, we know that they were met with gunfire. Some of them were shot. But at the end of this, the suspect was shot and is now deceased. The threat is now neutralized.
So that was a couple days ago. And what we learned from Lieutenant Alvarez there is that there were police officers who went to get their own kids out of the school. Now, the parents who were outside of the school who saw at least 40, some said that they're, look, the number now is 80 to 100 police officers ended up at that school. And nobody breached that door. Nobody did. You know how they finally got the door open? I mean, the timeline is just so bad right now. It's so awful. At 11:28, you know that well, first of all, let's just put it this way without times, okay? So here you have a kid who shot his grandma in the face. And then after he shot his grandma in the face, he was able to post something to a direct message on Facebook, to a group on Facebook, saying that he was going to shoot his grandmother. He shoots his grandmother. Then he posts that he shot his grandmother and posts that he's now going to go shoot up a school. Okay, so we know he shot his grandmother. We know he steals her car. We know he drives her car to the school, which is, about a mile away from grandma's house. We heard that grandma had called 911. There's mixed stories. Either grandma called 911 or grandma walks out of her house and talks to her neighbor and says to him, his name is Berto, "Berto, look what the kid did to me." And Berto calls 911. But then the kid drives to the school, crashes the car into a ditch, gets out of the car with his gun, sees people across the street, shoots at them. 12 minutes goes by where he has now crashed the car, shoots at people on the street, then starts to shoot at the school. And in those 12 minutes, there is no response to him. Now we find out today that the way he got into the school, there wasn't a brave school resource officer that engaged him. There wasn't a brave school resource officer that didn't engage him, even though Lieutenant Alvarez there told us that he actually spoke to the brave school resource officer.
When the shooter arrived here, you have said he was engaged by a school resource officer. Engaged how?
Right. So good morning. So yes, as you mentioned, of course, our main focus right now as the lead investigating agency is to provide factual information, gather the facts. Right now, what we're trying to establish and corroborate exactly what was that role for that initial school resource officer. Was he responding in his vehicle? Was he off his vehicle? What was the distance between him and the shooter? So we're trying to establish exactly what was his role and how did he encounter the shooter. So we spoke to that school resource officer yesterday evening. Our Texas Rangers did an interview with him. So I'm hoping to receive updated information today at some point in regards to what was his exact role when he initially saw the shooter prior to going into the school.
Prior to going into the school. Okay. So now we know none of that happened. I can't believe he said that they had actually spoken to this man and that this man, was going to clear stuff up about how far away he was when he engaged the shooter. Turns out there was nobody there. There was nobody there. And in fact, the back door that the director of the Department of Public Safety told us was unlocked, or told us was locked, depending on what day of the week it was this week. We now know that the school back door was propped open. It was propped open. The door was not unlocked or locked. It was open and propped open. And now we also know that when the police responded to the 911 call that grandma was shot in the face and that her car got stolen, and another batch of 911 calls from people saying there was a car accident. Remember, this is a tiny little town, 16,000 people. So having a grandma shot in the face and a 911 call about a shooting of a grandma by her grandson is a big damn deal. It's a big news story. And that her car was then stolen, and that the car then crashes in the ditch, and people are calling about what they thought was a car accident. 911 calls about that. And then people are calling because shots are fired at people on the street. So 911 calls about that. And then 911 calls about the shooter of the people who is aiming at people on the street is now shooting at the school. 911 calls about that. Guess what the police do? Guess what they do, everybody? They drove right past him. They literally responded, but they drove right past a kid walking down the street with a long gun after many 911 calls about shootings. Welcome to Texas. Now we're finding out that the door was propped open. There was no school resource officer there at all. And that the police decided, once they finally entered the school, and apparently 19 police officers eventually enter the school. This all starts at 11:30 in the morning. It doesn't end for an hour and a half. This doesn't end until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This is crazy. 19 police officers are in the school, but they don't want to breach the classroom. And the lie that they're telling now is they believed that this guy stopped shooting. They believed he stopped shooting and he was barricaded inside and he wasn't an active shooter anymore. Now, you never leave a shooter in a school, an elementary school, with dead fourth graders and decide that it's now just a barricaded perpetrator situation. I mean, this makes no sense, but this is the lie they want to go with today. And the only thing that they'll admit today is that transitioning, this is their word, transitioning from an active shooter to a barricaded suspect was a bad choice. It was a bad call. But there's 19 police officers in that school. And, I assume that the classroom had windows and they don't breach that school. You know how they finally get, they wait for the Border Patrol tactical unit to come because they said that they needed their equipment to breach the door. You got 19 police officers, all of them with long guns, and windows in the classroom, and they need a tactical unit to respond. The tactical unit doesn't respond for an hour, and then we find out that the way they got in was a janitor had supplied a key. Tactical equipment.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Okay, this is today.
You say there were 19 officers gathered in the hallway or somewhere. What efforts were made to try and break through that door? You say it was locked. What efforts were the officers making to try and break through either that door or another door to get inside that classroom?
None at that time. The on-scene commander at the time believed that it had transitioned from an active shooter to a barricaded subject.
You have people who are alive, children who are calling 911 saying, please send the police. They are alive. In that classroom, there are lives that are at risk.
Hey,
that's not protocol, is it?
We're well aware of that.
Right, yeah. But why was this decision made not to go in and rescue these children?
Again, the on-scene commander considered a barricaded subject and that there was time and there were no more children at risk. Obviously, based upon the information we have, there were children in that classroom that were at risk, and it was, in fact, still an active shooter situation and not a barricaded subject.
I mean, what the actual now you know that they were full of crap the entire time, this whole week. Every single minute of every single press conference, every single second of every single police officer and Texas Ranger and the director and a lieutenant colonel and this guy and that, they all literally lied to every single person at every single press conference all week long. They knew that there were 19 officers in that school. They knew that there was no school resource officer. They knew that the school door was propped open in the back. They knew that this guy, this shooter, had no body armor. That's a lie too, you know. He had no body armor. This was all made up. It was all made up to excuse the lack of courage displayed by all of these police officers, all of them. And some of them went to other parts of the school to get their kids out. And 19 officers stood in front of, there were 2 classrooms involved here. They were adjoining, like by a Jack and Jill bathroom. So it was classroom 111 and 112. Those were the 2 that were being slaughtered, of 2 4th grade classrooms with 2 teachers in them. And those were the people that were being slaughtered. And this gunman is in there for over an hour, and they were getting 911 calls the whole time from inside those classrooms. And today, Colonel McGraw, the director of the Department of Public Safety, tells us that the incident commander decided it was a barricade situation, even though Shimon Porcupez from CNN says to him, but there were 911 calls coming from the children in the classroom. And then, you have the department, the director of DPS, read the transcripts of the 911 calls.
The caller identified, I'll not say her name, but she was in room 112, called 911 at 12:03. The duration of the call was 1 minute and 23 seconds. She identified herself and whispered, she's in room 112. At 12:10, she called back.
Oh, God.
In room 12, advised her multiple dead.
That's 7 minutes later.
Again, she called on the phone. Again at 12:16, she called back and said there was 8 to 9 students alive. At 12:19, the 911 call was made, and another person in room 111 called. I will not say her name. She hung up when another student told her to hang up. At 12:21, you could hear over the 911 call that 3 shots were fired.
You could hear the shots. Hello.
911 call. It lasted for 21 seconds. The initial caller called back, student, child, called back, was told to stay on the line and be very quiet. She told 911 that he shot the door. At approximately 12:43 and 12:47, she asked 911 to please send the police now. At 12:46,
oh my God,
she said that she could hear the police next door. At 12:50, shots are fired. They can be heard over the 911 call. And at 12:51 is very loud and sounds like the officers are moving children out of the room. At that time, the first child that called was outside before the call cuts off.
Do you realize that that's 50 minutes of 911 calls being made with 19 police officers outside the door? Outside the door. On these 911 calls, at least 2 that were mentioned here, okay, at 12:21, the calls start coming in at 12:03. 21 minutes, I mean, there's a call 12:03, 12:10, 12:13, 12:16, 12:19, 12:21. Constant 911 calls. 12:21, you could hear 3 shots. That's 20 minutes of 19 police officers standing outside the door. You think they didn't hear the 3 shots? Of course they heard the 3 shots. How dare they actually have another press conference today and assert to us that the 19 police officers were responding to the incident commander's decision that this was not an active shooter situation any longer, but it was a barricaded incident. A perpetrator had barricaded himself. How are we supposed to like forget that they could hear it? They could hear it. It's on the 911 calls. There's a call at 12:21 where you could hear 3 shots, and there's another call at 12:50 where you could hear a shot. I mean, that's 30 minutes later. 30 minutes later. And they're still standing outside the door because they say they can't breach the classroom because the door is locked. But the way that they finally get in is the janitor opens the door or gives them the key to open the door. What the F happened here? Why are they lying so hard about all of this? The only conclusion is that Senator Ted Cruz wanted a narrative, and the narrative was going to be that a locked door would have prevented all of this with a police officer outside. And he said that after he attended a bullcrap press conference where they said there was a locked door and a police officer outside. He went outside of that press conference where they lied about that situation, and he said, well, if there was a locked door and a police officer, and all of a sudden everything changed, and the story keeps changing, and it's not subtle changes. It's never been a true story. How in the world today, same guy, same director of the Department of Public Safety, same guy, McCraw, telling us, oh, well, there were 19 police officers outside that classroom, but they thought it was over. They thought that the active shooter situation was over. And yet, there's 911 calls coming in where you can hear the shots, which means the police standing there outside that door could hear it and did nothing. Repeatedly. For an hour. For an hour.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
When I heard the shooting through the door, I told my friend to hide under something so he won't find us. I was hiding hard, and I was telling my friend to not talk because he's gonna hear us. The cop said, "Help if you need help," and then one of the persons in my class said, "Help." The guy overheard, and he came in and shot her.
Oh my God!
And then the cops barged into that classroom, and the guy shot the cops, and the cops just started shooting.
You know, I'm going to go with the kids. I'm going to go with what the kids are saying happened, okay? 19 police officers stood outside that door for over an hour. I mean, it's unbelievable. And they did not do anything. They didn't, get the key from the janitor if they didn't think that their giant weapons were going to open the door for them by shooting it open or through the window or anything like that. Then, go get the key. Go get the key, which is eventually what they did an hour later. An hour later, after a tactical unit came. While 911 calls were being made by people in that classroom. And you can hear shots fired on those 911 calls, but the police have told us today that they thought the shooting was over. They're standing right on the other side of the door. This makes no sense. You understand? This makes no sense at all. It's nonsense. This did not happen any way remotely like they're telling us it happened. This is insanity. The guy, by the way, the shooter, he had over 100 rounds. I mean, it's just, it's we're supposed to. Oh, and I will tell you, during the press conference today, they asked the same question that I asked yesterday. How did this high school dropout, this misfit, this guy who didn't plug into his community, who didn't participate in life in any meaningful way, how did he come up with about $5,000-$6,000 to buy a $1,900 weapon? And then we were told from the same store he bought 325 rounds of ammunition the next day. And then the next day after that, he bought another $1,900 weapon. And the store doesn't find this fascinating or, something that they should alert the media to, if not law enforcement. Okay, they just don't think there's any big deal about this 18-year-old buying, $5,000-$6,000 worth of gear, 325 rounds of ammo. They don't think that requires them to pick up a phone and tell anybody in this small town about that. Which is what I think red flag laws really ought to look at. Not just people who have diagnosed mental illness, but people that don't. But buy an enormous amount of firepower in a short period of time from the same store. And so today, one of the reporters asked this, director of the Department of Public Safety of the Texas Rangers, asked him, how do you think this kid got all this money? And you know what his answer was? I don't know. He paid with a debit card, so he must have had money in the bank. So a kid was able to shoot his grandma in the face, steal her car, drive away, get to 100 yards from a school, crash the car, shoot at people on the street, shoot at the school for about 12 minutes, enter the school through a propped open door, bring in at least 100 rounds of ammunition, put himself in a locked classroom situation, and stay in that classroom playing weird music to 10-year-olds, killed 2 teachers and 19 kids, while 19 police officers stand on the other side of the door. What country is this? What is this?
We do know this.
Yeah.
That he shot more than 100 rounds based on the audio evidence.
Audio
at
evidence.
That time, at least 100 rounds. He entered at 11:33, or 11:33. He started shooting in the classrooms. 111 and 112.
11:30.
And 11:35, 3 police officers entered the same door as the suspect entered. All 3 of those police officers worked for the Uvalde Police Department.
They walked in.
They were later followed by another 4. A team of Uvalde police officers, 3, and also a county deputy sheriff. So a total of 7 officers were on the scene. The 3 initial police officers that arrived went directly to the door, and 2 received grazing wounds at that time from the suspect, while the door was closed.
So there's a window.
At 11:37, there was more gunfire. Another 16 rounds was fired at 11:37. 1 at 11:37 and 16 seconds, 11:38, 11:40, 11:44. At 11:51, a police sergeant and USB agents started to arrive. At 12:03, officers continued to arrive in the hallway, and there were as many as 19 officers at that time in that hallway.
The shooting starts at 11:33. 11:33. It doesn't end till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay? At 11:33, we get 3 police officers. They walk in. They said they got grazing wounds. What'd they do? Walk out? They walked out. And then, 5 minutes later, you get another 4. And they're all walking through the door, which obviously was open. Open. And they're standing outside of this classroom number 111 and 112. Okay? These adjoined classrooms. And as you now know, at 12:03, half an hour into the shooting, listen, Parkland went on for about 10 minutes, and 17 were killed. And this guy, in 10 minutes, this Nicholas Cruz dude here in Parkland, he was able to go from the first floor to the second floor to the third floor, back down to the second floor, back down to the first. Can you imagine what went on for an hour? And you got 7 police officers there within 5 minutes of the onset of the shooting of the children. 5 minutes, you have 7 officers there. And at 12:03, a half an hour after the shooting starts, that's when the 911 calls, please come and get us. Then 12:10, then 12:13, then 12:16, then 12:19, then 12:21. Now they're telling us, well, they thought the shooting was over. Okay, so you could hear 3 shots at 12:21, then at 12:36, then at 12:41, then at 12:46, then at 12:50. 19 police officers standing on the other side of this door. On the other side. You know, I just want to let you know that these big badass Texas, lawmen, they're cowards. They're lily-livered cowards, and they lie. We have a problem. They want more guns. They want the kids to be armed now. Listen, if like I said, if more guns made you safer, we'd be the safest place on the planet. You know, I heard that from the presidential podium. Yeah, I heard Karine Jean-Pierre actually say that.
America has more guns than people in this country. Mm-hmm. If more guns were indeed the solution, we would be the safest country in the world, but we are not.
Oh, thank you. Just saying. Gary in Fort Lauderdale.
Randy.
Yes.
There's so much wrong here, I don't even know where to start.
It's bizarre.
But I'm going to say this. Those 19 lying cowards, first of all, they've already proven that they cannot function as police officers anymore.
Right.
Which means give them another job. I mean, they don't need to be fired. They can still work for the county or the city or whatever it is, but they can do a less demanding job where you don't have to have any guts and you don't have to worry about serving and protecting. You know, maybe they could clean the public restrooms or cut lawns in the park. There's plenty of jobs like that. And these cops, they're so good at busting people who might say abortion. Like in Florida, you can't say gay. In Texas, you can't say abortion. Maybe they're on patrol for women that are talking about having an abortion. That's where their focus is. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Put them on the snitch patrol. Yeah, definitely. These guys all need to be fired. Every last one of them needs to go, including the director of the Department of Public Safety. I mean, that man, McCraw, he has lied so hard to everybody since Tuesday. And I'm telling you, this is why you want a free press. They're not the enemy of the people. The press is there to enlighten you, to teach you, to show you, to get facts, to explain to you what is going wrong here. They're not the enemy.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
The magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it. Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
You know, I'm making a speech tomorrow at the NRA in Houston, and it'll be very interesting. It's, interesting time to be making such a speech, frankly.
Interesting.
And then on Saturday night, I'm going to Wyoming to campaign against Liz Cheney, who's absolutely atrocious, the job she's done. Huh. But on Friday night, I'll be in Houston, and we'll be making a speech and discussing a lot of the things which you would agree to. And, you have to protect your Second Amendment. You have to give that Second Amendment great protection because without it, we would be a very dangerous country, frankly.
Okay, frankly, he has no earthly idea what he's talking about. None. And nobody is going to the NRA Jubilee. Nobody is going to be attending the NRA. Even Greg Abbott isn't going. He is going to, apparently, we'll see. We'll wait and see. I will pay attention to it over the weekend. Abbott is supposed to pipe something in, like a pre-record. He was going to appear there, but he's decided the optics are lame. The optics are cruel and unusual at this point. So he's not going to attend. Only Donald Trump and Ted Cruz will be attending. Even the Gatlin brothers. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard Larry Gatlin interviewed. I don't know if you even know who the Gatlin, boys are. I don't think he can make it through a sentence without quoting the Bible erroneously, by the way. I just don't think he's able to have a conversation with anybody that isn't quoting a 6,000-year-old book. This is the one he knows. Anyway, so he's not going. Lee Greenwood, and I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. I can own an AK-47 and a shotgun and an Uzi, and I'd gladly shoot up a school zone to defend. He's not going. Don McLean, who has 2 songs that anybody might know, the endless American Pie song, which goes on and on and on, and as an old DJ who had to play that swill, which he followed up with Starry, Starry Night about Vincent van Gogh, offing himself. He's supposedly like a super well-known dick. He's not going. Dan Crenshaw, the one with the eye patch, he's not going. John Cornyn, the other senator from Texas, he's not going. Only Donald Trump and Ted Cruz are going. Now, Greg Abbott, I got to say, last year, I don't know if you remember, it's not even a year old, last June, I think it was the middle of June last year, Governor Greg Abbott signed 7 pieces of legislation into law to loosen the gun laws. Like I said, I didn't even think Texas had any, but to loosen the gun laws in Texas. He signed 7 pieces of legislation in response to a school shooting that left 10 children dead, selling the people of Texas on the idea that more guns wouldn't mean more shootings, wouldn't mean more gun deaths, wouldn't mean more death, that it would mean less death. And, I think that's been put to bed now. But he signed a bill that actually said that if you're a business and someone walks in carrying a gun and you refuse to let them in or refuse them service, you can't contract with the state of Texas because you've discriminated against a firearm. You've discriminated against a firearm and you've discriminated against ammunition. I swear. Oh, Senate Bill 19. He also said hotels must allow people. Now, remember, no one talks about Las Vegas, where a man went to a hotel on the Vegas Strip and literally semi-automatic weaponed 58 people dead, never figured out what the hell that was about ever. So Abbott thought this was a great time to allow guests to bring their guns into hotel rooms. That was another one he signed. That was number 20. 550 said you don't even have to bother to wear a holster. You don't have to have a shoulder holster or a belt holster. You could carry your firearm any way you want to in Texas. He signed 957. Which said that possessing, manufacturing, transporting, or repairing any firearm silencer is now no longer criminal. So there, and barring any federal law that would repeal the use of silencers or outlaw silencers or regulate silencers, that it was null and void in Texas, which is illegal. Then he said that during a disaster, firearms can be sold, transferred, transported. And then 1927, authorizing constitutional carry, meaning you can carry a handgun anywhere you want in Texas without a license to carry. That's what he did in response to the Santa Fe. That's what he did in response to El Paso, the Walmart. That's what he did in response to Odessa Midland mass murder. I mean, this is crazy. This is just madness. And he did it all for a paycheck, right? And so he was supposed to go and speak to his paymasters at the convention, the NRA Summer Jubilee, and even he's not going. Even he's not going. That's how, you know that he's got a shred, a scintilla, just a fiber of decency somewhere in his being, somewhere. Maybe he prayed about it. Oh, it's really sick. It's just so twisted. And I forgot that he also exempted Texas from any federal gun control regulations. Now, let me just tell you real quick why you might wonder, and you'd be right to wonder, and this is what I'm here for, to help you unwonder, to help you answer what you wonder about. So do you ever wonder, like, why there's laws that say you have to be 21 to have a handgun, but only 18 to have, a semi-automatic rifle? Why is that? Well, because back in the day when they actually raised the age of people to have handguns, it was post-Civil War stuff, right? These are the laws we're still relying on in the 21st century, yeah. But back then, the crimes were committed with handguns. Crimes were committed with handguns. Long guns were just rifles. Long guns were for hunting. Long guns had utility. Long guns were used for, killing wild boar on your property. Feral pigs. This is a very Texas answer for long guns. But okay, I get it. So the crime guns were considered the handguns, and that's why the age is elevated for handguns, because they went after the guns that cause crime. Well, welcome to the 21st century, where the long guns have morphed into being semi-automatic killing machines, weapons of war. Those are now the criminal's choice. Those are now the weapons that are slaughtering our children. And did you know that the number one cause of death in the United States of America, and only in the United States of America, did you know that the number one cause of death for children in the United States of America is guns? Did you know that? Oh, yeah. We have 1 million dead from COVID, and now we have an epidemic of guns, gun violence being the number one cause of killing our children. So we sacrifice grandma and grandpa and uncles and aunts to the COVID because, your body, your choice, you wouldn't slap a piece of paper on your face. Whatever. But now the kids are actually being killed at such a fast clip, it makes COVID almost look stupid. Because COVID was only killing the elderly, the seniors. Although I will taunt you with this. My mother was 90. She's 91 years old. Got the COVID. Didn't kill her. Vaccines, Vaccines work.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
What's changed is the culture. The nuclear family's collapsing before our eyes.
Oh, give me
Church attendance is at an all-time low. Kids' brains are being warped by social media. And we forced our kids into lockdowns, isolating them from socializing with each other and pushing them deeper into video games and wicked internet sites.
Wicked.
Sports aren't mandatory anymore. Drugs are everywhere. The media and entertainment industry fosters a sick thirst for fame and notoriety. And there's just a general lack of respect for human life. We're missing all the ingredients for a healthy country.
Shut up, Jesse. You're a stupid producer who stepped in, poop and got lucky. Well, honest to God, man, this is Bill O'Reilly, Tiller the baby killer, right? Until somebody actually killed Dr. Tiller, telling you that the thing that's going on isn't more guns. It's not that we're awash in guns. It's not that we're a country that has 120 guns for every 100 people. That's not the problem. The problem is anything at all but guns. The problem is you don't go to church. The problem is you don't respect your parents. The problem is the nuclear family. Divorce has been around. I mean, my God. My grandma was divorced. My grandma. Holy crap. These excuses are older than the crack in Grandma Mary's ass. I loved her. She was really something, boy. She was a flapper in the 1920s where they had opium dens and stuff. But drugs are everywhere. That's the problem. Give me a freaking break with this swill. You know, I'm going to play you Jake Oshens. I can't really say this last name, but, you know, it's a very famous Massachusetts last name, Ockensloss. He's a very decent guy. He decided to post this last night, and it got to me because this is exactly how I feel.
I just tucked my children into bed tonight, and I can't stop thinking about the 18 sets of parents in Texas who never will again. I don't oftentimes get emotional in politics. I think it's an endeavor best done with rational, calculated approaches. But on this issue, as a veteran who knows the power of these weapons of war, as a father who knows the love of a parent, I find that I've got hate in my heart tonight. I despise the organizations and the politicians who allow this to happen. This slaughter is a policy choice. The Senate needs to vote on common sense gun safety legislation tonight. And we need to disband the NRA and take the fight to the enablers of this daily slaughter.
Seriously, I feel the same way. I really do. Anybody who knows the power of these weapons and says that they're just fine in the hands of an 18-year-old or that they're just fine, washing up all over this country for profit, after seeing what the result is, after seeing it over and 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 over for the last decade at least. I mean, I'm not even going to go back to 1999 and Columbine because that was bizarre, right? Remember, everybody was like, wow, that was really bizarre. That was really crazy. That was really nuts. So that was a one-off, right? That was a one-off. That's never going to happen again. And then, it started happening closer and closer in time to each other, one after the other, after the other. Then it became synagogues. Then it became military bases. Then it became concerts. Then it became hotels. Then it became mosques. Then it became, supermarkets and grandmas. Now it's kids again. I mean, over and over and over and over, all for one industry, to make an enormous amount of money. You know how we used to say, over my dead body, you'll take this gun from my cold dead. Yeah, well, I got news for you, Charlton. Our bodies are cold and dead, and they're 10. They're 10 years old. And Sandy Hook, they were 6 years old. And America decided that the price of a dead or a bunch of dead first graders or fourth graders or third graders or high schoolers or junior high school was fine. They were willing to pay that price. They were willing to pay it. We have got to change who represents us. We have got to start looking at different representation in this country.
You've had this conversation on a national level when you ran for president, when you run for statewide office, in Congress. For people who don't follow it as closely as you do, what's the most effective change that they can vote for, that they can choose? What's the thing that is going to reduce us coming out on a semi-weekly basis and talking about mass shootings?
Semi-weekly.
The only thing that is going to change this is political power. You leave the same people in the same offices and expect a different result, then you're crazy, and you're going to get more of the same.
It is a mental illness, you understand. People are literally in love with these penis extenders. And that's what they are. And that's all they are. Because you see that these cowards, these chicken crap coward police officers, they were so scared. And they had the same firepower. And there were 19 of them and one of him, and they were too scared to go in. And, you know, somewhere along the line, Lieutenant Chris Oliveras actually admitted that the police were reluctant to act because they didn't want to get shot.
Don't current best practices, Lieutenant, call for officers to disable a shooter as quickly as possible, regardless of how many officers are actually on site?
Correct. The active shooter situation, you want to stop the killing, you want to preserve life, but also one thing that, of course, the American people need to understand is that officers are making entry into this building. They do not know where the gunman is. They are hearing gunshots. They are receiving gunshots. At that point, if they proceeded any further, not knowing where this suspect was at, they could have been shot. They could have been killed. And at that point, that gunman would have the opportunity to kill other people inside that school. So they were able to contain that gunman inside that classroom so that he was not able to go to any other portions of the school to commit any other killings.
Wait. Okay, so there are so many lies in that 46 seconds. And that was all that was, 46 seconds. Okay, so first he says they didn't know where the gunman was. Well, obviously they knew where the gunman was. He was in room 111. Obviously they knew where he was. And then he actually walks his way into his bullcrap. He walks his way into, so they were able to contain him in this one spot. So they obviously knew where, so he just lies like that. Also, he's lying to you because when Wolf Blitzer asked him that question about best practices, which is to take out an active shooter, period, no matter how many officers there are or aren't, he was selling us this story that there was just one school resource officer, which they called a school resource officer to make it sound like, it was, the grandpa that cleans the pipes or some such thing. No, it was an actual police officer who was AWOL. He was not at his post. But there were 19 police officers. And he knew that because he said, we don't know where he is, except we do know where he is, and we were containing him there. Lies.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844.
561-270-3844. The choice is to vote for people who reflect and represent your values. What I'm trying to say is that too often we dismiss folks who belong to another political party. And we say all Republicans are this or that, all Democrats are this and that. I'm just saying that the majority of us in Texas, which includes Republicans and Democrats, want the right thing. And their values are unreflected by those in power who continue to ignore this kind of slaughter that we're seeing in our schools. And yes, it so happens that Democrats right now who are on the ballot are for common sense gun laws. Democrats are for a woman's right to choose. Democrats are for a state that's big enough for all of us, regardless of who you love or how you love. Democrats are for what I think allows this state to fulfill its promise and its potential. But when you meet with the parents of a 10-year-old girl who was shot and killed 2 days ago, as I did, and they tell you that girl will never live to her potential or promise, and she was the most beautiful girl, she was the happiest girl, she was the most talented girl, and she's never going to get there. You've got to vote like our lives depend on it, because clearly the lives of these kids depend on it, and I've just got to make that case to the people of Texas to make sure that they understand there is an option right now to do something better, that this doesn't have to be our future. This isn't our fortune. This isn't our fate. This is on us to do something about it. And in Texas history, there are so many examples of people who've stood up and stepped up and over years and sometimes decades been able to achieve the big important thing they were fighting for against tough odds. Wasn't easy. Maybe they failed a couple times along the way, but ultimately they got there. And that describes the people of Texas right now. We are going to get there, and we cannot give up hope. We cannot succumb to despair. We've got to stand and fight.
So that's Beto's pitch, and it's a good one. If you believe in freedom, like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, we don't get to live anymore past, in some schools, past 6. In other schools, past 10. Some schools, 9-year-olds. Some schools, you get to make it to 16. You know what I'm saying? Because they love the fetus. They hate the children. They don't want to feed the children. They don't want to bathe the children. They don't want to educate the children. They're very busy banning books. They're very busy telling womankind what we can and cannot do with our bodies while they take the life of the bodies that we produce with our bodies, the children, right? And then they tell us, oh, arm them too. Give the children training so that they can defend themselves at 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 and 12 years old. Look, the lying is so in your face now. It is so obvious. The media is not the enemy of the people. Republicans are the enemy of the people. Republicans who don't believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Republicans who don't believe that, there's any room in this country for people to fall in love with whoever they fall in love with and say who they are. Oh, somehow that's soiling America to say who you are. To say, I love Brad. Do you know, it's somehow that I saw this kid. I bet you saw it too. I saw this kid in Florida right after, Ron death sentence here, who was very happy to preside over, more deaths per capita in this state than any other state. While we celebrated 1 million dead Americans from COVID, no less, from COVID, he decided that the thing that was really killing us, the thing that was really crimping his style in this penis-shaped state was saying that you're gay at school school graduations, right? And so one of the kids who I guess he was valedictorian had to give a speech, and turns out he was a gay kid. And because he was prohibited from saying he was a gay kid, he decided to substitute curly hair for saying he was gay. So when he stood up, he started to say, listen, we live in a very humid state right now, and I am a kid who has curly hair. And it's very hard to control your curly hair, even though you try and straighten it out, and you keep trying to straighten it out. But it won't straighten out. And then you feel like, I can't go outside in Florida because it's so humid, and people are going to look at you funny because you have curly hair. But then he started to say, because of the community around me that accepted me with my curly hair, my unstraightened hair, right? And it was so brilliant. It was so smart. And it was so illustrative of how ridiculous it is to say, you can't say this because that'll straighten everything out. Or banning books. Like I said at the beginning of this book banning effort, if you find yourself on the side of book banning, you're not a good guy. You're just not. I don't care what story you manufacture to tell yourself. You are not on the right side of history. But it's a good thing that they banned saying gay, and it's a good thing they banned books because that'll stop the gun violence. That'll save our kids. It's all a lie. You understand it's a lie, and it's a lie to keep power. It's a lie to preserve their power. It's a lie to lord over you with their power, to take away your rights one at a time, which is what they're doing. It is what that Republican Party of today stands for. It stands for taking away people's privacy rights, creating a surveillance state. This is all part of what they're complaining about. If we would just have more surveillance at the school, if we would just have more guns at the school, if we would just train teachers now to be the first line of defense at school. And then they'll tell you, well, of course, an 18-year-old can go to war, but you don't want an 18-year-old to have a weapon of war, because why is it okay to make our 18-year-old serve in the military? I got news for you. Almost every job in the military doesn't require using a weapon unless you're infantry. Okay. And in that case, you've been trained and you're supervised, and you can't bring your gun anywhere you want to in the military. You can't bring it to on-base housing. You can't bring it to the chow hall. You understand? You can't bring it to the BX. So let's not compare apples to oranges, please. Now, you got to be 25 years old to rent a car. to rent a car. Why is that? Why would that be? Oh, because Wall Street and big business controls the insurance industry. And guess what their actuarial charts show? They show that if you don't rent cars to kids under 25, you have less accidents, less claims. So you can't rent a car in this country till you're 25, but you can go waltz into a gun shop and buy a $1,900 semi-automatic assault weapon, and then the next day buy 325 rounds of ammunition, and then the next day go buy another $1,900 assault rifle, and it doesn't trigger any alarm bells. It doesn't make any... But you can't rent a car. You can't drink a beer. Does that make sense? Oh, F no, it doesn't make sense because it's nonsense. And that's why they have to lie. We are not a free country. We are a country that is committing suicide. We are a country that's killing ourselves for industry, for business, for big business, not even my business. Big.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
All right, this is Beto O'Rourke's rally outside of the NRA Jubilee in Houston just now. Vote him out! Vote him out! Vote him out! Vote him out! All right, that's a good start, but nothing's going to change. It takes a really long time to make change in this country, but I will give you a little quote because every day is now Memorial Day in the United States. Every day is now Memorial Day. I mean, I was listening to the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, and she was asking, do I just leave the flags at half-mast? Because they're already at half-mast because of Buffalo, because of killing grandmas in Buffalo. So now that we have this mass shooting, do I just leave them at half-mast? Is that going to be the permanent state? Yes, because every day in America is now Memorial Day. So sad. It's just so gut-wrenching what we've turned into. A suicidal nation basically is what we are. You know, you look at North Korea and you go, how does that happen? How did people just become a hermit nation? We're a suicidal nation. We are literally killing ourselves for the benefit of an industry, a freaking industry. It's like a bad movie. I've been doing this a really long time. You want to know how long? Okay, so I lived in Dallas, and I only know this because somebody posted this today on, I guess it was Twitter, that today is the anniversary of the song by Cameo, Word Up. You remember that song? Put your hands in the air like you don't care. Korn made a remake of it for those of you who are younger. Do you know how long ago that song was dropped? 36 years ago. 36 years ago. And I just realized, oh my God, I've been in radio a long ass time. And the whole time, I mean, the time that I was shot at, obviously I'm still here. They didn't kill me. But the time that I was shot at was in Texas. It was in Odessa, Texas, where they just had a mass shooting all these years later. Nothing changes. But I will give you this. Thomas Edison, who was a great inventor, who through trial and error was able to come up with some of the best things that we've ever had, said that the key to success, the way to have success, after all kinds of failure and experimentation, is to try one more time. That's how you succeed with your ideas. You just try one more time. And so we have to try one more time on this ridiculous suicidal mission that America seems to be on. And the sane people, the ones who understand that you're only as good as the weakest among you, that the weakest link can get you killed, maybe now you understand why they teach you that in the military. It's because of the guns, you see. So the weakest link can get you killed, right? And we all know that. We have a lot of weak links. A lot. And so we have to try one more time to get those guns out of circulation, to get those weapons of war off our freaking streets and out of our schools and out of our malls and out of our Walmarts and out of our top supermarkets and out of our, I mean, it's just, one more time. Everybody, I hope you got it in you. I seriously hope you're ready for this, because you have an opportunity to try one more time. It is coming, and it's going to come swiftly. So, listen, we're at Memorial Day, but every day's Memorial Day now. And so what happens after Memorial Day is the summer starts. Okay, so what do we know about summer? We know that this summer we're going to have a decision by the Supreme Court on whether or not women can retain their right to privacy, right? We know that. And then we know June 9th, we're going to start to hear the evidence about the coup, the violent coup that happened in this country. And if it wasn't for the gun laws that are in place in Washington, D.C., oh my God, can you imagine what January 6th would have looked like? It was bad enough. We only had, like 4 cops die and 1 ex-Air Force veteran die because she wanted to kill other people by breaching the Capitol, and they gave her every opportunity not to climb through the window, but she just couldn't stop herself. Because she was mad. She had gone mad and was willing to kill people to protect Donald Trump's big lie. And she did not make it. But can you imagine what a bloodbath that would have been had there been weapons allowed like there were in Michigan at the Capitol in Lansing? Can you imagine? So you understand that things have got to be different. We have to try. We have to try. And I'm telling you, sometimes it takes, listen, anybody that ever, researched what it took for women to get the right to vote, it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't 1 protest. It wasn't 12 protests. It wasn't 100 protests. It was women literally starving themselves, literally starving themselves for the right to suffrage, okay, for the right to vote. If people will remember the Civil Rights March, I mean, it wasn't just 1968. It wasn't just 1967. It wasn't 65 or 64. So Emmett Till, this is another thing that may have to happen, and I'm not alone in suggesting this. Major media outlets are starting to mull this over as well, and that is, Emmett Till's mother understood that she had to show what happened to Emmett Till. And the only way she could show what happened to her precious little boy was to have an open casket so people could see what was done to her little boy. And media outlets are now starting to discuss whether or not more graphic coverage of shooting of children needs to happen. I'm telling you, I heard this from Jake Tapper.
We as a country continue to allow people who should not be able to have access to firearms, access to weapons, designed to slaughter as many people as possible, as quickly as legally possible. And as a result, predictably, today 19 kids are dead in Uvalde, Texas. Their family members last night were asked by law enforcement for DNA samples. Why? Because the damage, the physical havoc inflicted upon their kids' bodies, in some cases, was so severe, so devastating, law enforcement needed the DNA to identify the remains of these children. There are images of these shootings that law enforcement, and frankly, we in the news media, that we don't share with you. Because they're so horrific. They're so awful. But maybe we should. Maybe the shock to the system would prompt our leaders to figure out how to make sure society can stop these troubled men, and it's almost always men, from obtaining these weapons used to slaughter our children.
People are starting to mull this over. I mean, we talked about it yesterday, and I'm for it. I am. But, you know, in lieu of showing you the wiped out, you know, brain tissue and the disfigured faces of 10-year-olds or 6-year-olds or grandmas at the top supermarket, I put the story of Parkland in today's homework. So go to randyrhodes.com and then click on the homework section, because the homework, you know, it's free. It's free. Yes, you will come up against the, you know, please donate thing. Please do. Please do. We can't do it without you. But you can bypass that. You could just, you know, close it and then just go to the homework section, okay? And in the section of the homework that says, you know, Parkland, you will see 2 articles. And one of them is called Scott Peterson Sleeps at Night. And in that article is a very brutal, minute by minute, because, you know, that Cruz kid, he was, what, 18 years old, 19 years old? He was 19, right in this age bracket, same as this kid in Uvalde. But it's a TikTok of what happened beginning at 2:19 on February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2018. From the minute the Uber dropped Nicholas Cruz off to his rampage, because it comes right out of the 439-page Safety Commission, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Commission's report. And there's a really brutal walkthrough of what he did. Let's start there. Read that. Understand what it looks like. Happy Memorial Day.